Hey, Danny Matta here with PT Biz, and I have generated literally thousands of new patients through workshops face-to-face for the cash-based clinic I started in Atlanta. And I'm going to talk to you about how you can connect with people emotionally and get them to drive to taking action to solving a problem. So one of the things that we have seen a lot of success with when it comes to cash-based clinics is the fact that you can go out in the world, go out in your community and find your people, right? Historically, with in-network clinics, they're built off of referrals from hospitals and from surgeons and physicians. And what they do is they market to these referral sources, which, makes a lot of sense. That's a logical thing to do if that's where you're getting a lot of your referrals. Now, for a cash-based clinic, a physician referral, it's not as common, right? It's harder to develop. There's less physicians that are interested in referring to that type of a clinic, and those exist for sure, but it's not as tried and true as going out and actually marketing directly to your target audience. This is called direct response marketing. So one of the ways in which you can do this is to educate people and to do, whether it be workshops or talks for different groups, education events, even digitally, right? You can do education events for groups of parents, for youth athletes on their soccer club's Facebook group page or whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter. It's all about how can you convey your message to other people in a way that is clear and drives action. And that's a really, really important thing to learn how to do. And I can tell you, for me, I had very little public speaking training, coming out of the military. I had a little bit, and it had more to do with how you're presenting yourself in front of soldiers in leadership environments. One of the jobs I had was with a brigade, and it was very much kind of a fish out of water place for a physical therapist, because this is a group of nothing but basically infantry soldiers, and there's I can count on one hand how many medical providers are attached to a brigade. So understanding how to carry yourself and how to interact with people in meetings and how to present information was something that I had to go through. But it's quite different than how you're going to talk to somebody about their back pain. It's a very different situation. But some of the variables that we talked about, some of the things that we went over, they do carry over. But when you're talking to a group of people locally about becoming patients of yours, which is primarily what I'm talking about, you could apply this to pretty much whatever you want. There's an emotional connection there that's really important, because the injury somebody has, especially if it's been more of a chronic problem, it's created a lot of stress in their life, and if you can relate to that in a way through words, right, and through connecting with them with some of the things I'm going to talk about, it's one of the best ways to get them to take the next step, which is logically to then show interest in how they may be able to work with you and how you may be able to help them and have a conversation about that, right? So that's the intention of this. The public speaking training that I did get post-military that was actually fantastic was through the group that I taught for, through Mobility WOD, the Stretch group, and even through CrossFit. I had some feedback that basically mystery shoppers, if you were, would show up and audit presentations or these courses that we were teaching that were 1 or 2 days, and then they wouldn't tell you that they were there working for the organization, and then they would take you out to dinner afterward and give you feedback on what you could do better, which was really helpful actually. So a lot of this is, for me, I learned through that, and I learned through just doing a massive amount of presentations and workshops at this point. But if you want to engage with people, you really have to do it emotionally to drive action. So number one, you have to appeal to feelings before logic, right? So frustration is a big one for a lot of people that have injuries. Isn't it frustrating when you aren't sure whether you can pick up X, Y, and Z without hurting your back again? Isn't it frustrating that you're not sure you can go play golf with your friends because you don't know if you're going to tweak your back on the 8th hole and you're not going to be able to finish it out? You're going to be sitting in there in the golf cart embarrassed that you can't. you have to be able to relate to whatever it is the audience you're talking to is. The nice thing with physical therapists is we can relate because oftentimes we've had injuries ourselves, and we've also worked with a ton of people that have injuries. So being able to relate emotionally is something we can do really well, but we shy away from it usually because it makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable. There's a difference between us being able to talk about something and then us deeply feeling that thing, right? It's not you that's feeling that, but as you talk about it, sometimes you get wrapped up in it and it can make you feel that way. And that is something that you have to be able to separate in order to be able to talk about things emotionally, right? So it's what's happening to somebody else. It's not what's happening to you. Isn't it frustrating when X, Y, and Z? I can relate. I work with people like this all the time. I can relate. I've been there as well, right? Like these are things you can say to really be able to relate to people emotionally before they make a logical decision. So yes, it is frustrating. Logically, would you like to fix that so that you can keep playing golf? Yes, I would, right? You have to tap into that first before they can make a logical decision after the fact. One of the best things you can do is use what we call imagine if scenarios. And I love these. This is actually my favorite way of relating to people because I prefer, and it's maybe not the most effective way, but I prefer to actually drive towards positivity. So, and you may notice this with my content, very, very rarely am I going to go down the rabbit hole of something negative. Fear, scare tactics. I would probably have far more downloads if I just did fear, because human nature is for us to pay more attention and to be more locked in to fear because of threats and how that, developmentally has kept us safe. We pay more attention to that than we do something positive. Oh, something good has happened again. Cool, whatever. We don't really notice that as much as, oh, there's a grizzly bear, like run away, right? Like that's how we're wired. So for you though, if you can use imagine if scenarios, you can really tap into helping people visualize what their life could look like if they would stop ignoring something and actually work on it. So imagine if you could swing a golf club, with no restrictions, and you could go on those golf trips with your friends and play 36 holes and not have to worry about your back, breaking down on you during that process because it moves well, it's strong, and you feel confident. Imagine if that was you. Where would you go? What trips would you take? How much more would you play? How much better do you think you would play? These are what if it works scenarios. And I like that far better because it puts people in such a more positive place. And that's how I want to work with them. I don't want to scare them into working with me. I want them to want to move towards something that's important to them. So imagine if that's two words you can use that immediately will increase the likelihood that people connect with what you're saying if you can actually help them get that end result, right? Which that's usually not the concern for the people we work with. So third would be share something personal. So one of the things that I've seen, and I've seen this now with a handful of providers that are like really good ACL rehab providers, more often than not, they've had an ACL tear. And it's interesting that they can relate on such a deep level to going through the same things that the people that they're working with are now going through as well. So if you can share an experience, share something that is a consequence of something that happened, or a shared frustration, and do so in a story that relates to what they're going through. I remember when I tore my ACL, and if somebody's in front of you and they have torn their ACL and they are down in the dumps because they know they have this months worth of rehab ahead of them. They're not sure if they're going to get back to playing whatever the sport is where they hurt themselves. They're nervous that they can't return to sport. They don't want to go through this again. And you can say, when I tore my ACL, here's how I was feeling. And if you can say what they're feeling without them having to tell you, you're inherently the solution to their problem. You got them, right? Like, I've never torn my ACL. I can't relate to people the same way. Now I can say different things about whatever other injuries, but specifically, if you can do that, you're going to relate to people really well. And go figure, people that have had those surgeries that are physical therapists, they tend to do a fantastic job with that audience. They have obviously a personal interest in it, and they can develop a great niche just doing that. I'm not saying you have to tear ACL to be an ACL rehab specialist, but if you do, you're going to be able to relate to people on an emotional level and a shared experience level that it's just, you can't without that. So number 4 would be to really make sure your audience feels the problem. And again, this gets back to the emotional side of things that are going on. As physical therapists, what we typically do is we want to talk about research studies and data and, progressive overloads and all this stuff that's like high level scientific things that we've learned, that is beneficial to know, but the average person doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. All they know is their back hurts, right? And they don't want it to hurt anymore. So for you got to drop some of the research. And if you're gonna talk about research, you have to sprinkle it in sparingly with things that are going to be, more directed towards what they're going through and what they're trying to get back to, right? It's not that you want to break down a randomized control trial in front of them. That's not what you want. This really has to be more about how they feel than anything else. Okay, the last thing is they have to care. They have to care about what they're trying to change before they will commit to changing it. So this is one of those things where, let's say you have a group of people and you're talking about something back pain related, right? Well, they obviously care somewhat, but maybe it's not bad enough before they make a decision to act on fixing that, and resolving that and getting help to not have to avoid the things that they enjoy. But if you can point out the fact that they are missing elements of life that they want to participate in, and how much are they willing to give up or say no to or sit on the sidelines for while other people around them are actually living life and doing the things they want? How long are they willing to wait? How bad does it need to get? These are things that you have to make people really care about what they need to do before they'll actually do it. And one of the more important things, and this actually relates to also in office, is if someone expresses their frustration to you, it's far, far more compelling than you expressing it to them. For instance, I had a patient that came in, and this was just kind of out of the ordinary for me. An older guy, very deconditioned, had been referred by a long-term client of mine. And this guy was coming from an hour away. Very, I don't know the best way to describe it. He was a very sort of outwardly gruff individual. He was, old school entrepreneur, had owned a bunch of Pizza Huts, stuff like that. And he was a hard person to work with, a hard person to break through on. And I remember he'd seen lots of other people, but dude, you drove an hour to come see me. I remember having a conversation with him, and he's giving me the runaround, and he's just acting like nothing's wrong. Old school, kind of like my dad's generation. They're not going to tell you something's wrong with them, whatever. They're not supposed to, right? And finally, I said, "Look, man, you drove an hour to come down here. Why are you here? What are we working on? What is it important that it's important for you to work on and get back to?" And as soon as I asked him this question, I don't know if anybody had been this direct with him or maybe asked this in this way, he instantly started to break down. Completely caught me off guard, and I was not expecting that. And, as he sort of got to the point where he could talk again, he told me that he was really concerned about his health. He'd spent his entire career working really hard, and he'd been very successful as an entrepreneur, but his health was awful, just really, really bad. And he had taken his grandkids down to Disney, and his ankle was bugging him a lot, right? So he couldn't walk around very well because he had a lot of pain in his ankle. So he had to, at Disney, get a power wheelchair to ride around in, a little scooter to ride around in. And now, if that wasn't embarrassing enough, he got on a roller coaster with his grandson, and he was so overweight that they had to stop the ride to get a seatbelt extension for him because the safety bar wouldn't fit on him. And that was it. That was the last straw for him after decades of not taking care of himself. So if I said something to him like, "Hey, are you just going to keep treating yourself bad like this?" or whatever, that's not as powerful as him telling me this story that obviously was quite upsetting to him. about how he wasn't able to live the life that he wanted with his grandkids, who it was getting very hard for him to keep up with, right? And now that I knew what he wanted and that he had expressed it to me, he knew that I could help him get what he was trying to, or where he was trying to go. I mean, I saw that guy until the very last day that I saw patients. You know, he's one of the very last people that I saw. And it's cool to be able to work with people like that to help them change their life, right? But what I'm getting at is to be able to emotionally tap in with people is something that historically as physical therapists, we're pretty damn good at. Some people are better than others. Depends on your emotional intelligence generally. But to understand these variables, both from, in particular, a public speaking standpoint, where you can be in front of people and you can talk to a group of people and you can emotionally connect with them, that will change your business. I'll tell you this much. If you learn the skill of how to engage with people from a 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 100, 1 to 5, whatever, doesn't matter the size of the group, but to talk to a group of people and be able to emotionally connect with them, to then show them what action they need to take, to then help them take that action to get the result that they want. That is how you build a bulletproof brand, reputation, and lead generation that's very predictable from in-person events that you can set up, and you can do it many different ways. So this is something that's been a core tenet of a lot of the people that we work with, of the businesses that I've helped build. I mean, shit, I'm doing it right now. I'm just talking to you about tapping in to these things in a one-to-many platform through a podcast and through a YouTube video. So if you learn these and you start working on these and apply these, you're going to get a heck of a lot more people that are going to come and work with you because they trust you. They believe you're the right person to help them with their injury, with their whatever frustration they're dealing with. And in the office, if you do the same thing and you help them get the outcome they want, they're going to be way more likely to refer their friends and family. And that snowball is what builds these businesses. So as always, I hope this helps. I hope this helps improve your presentations and your workshops and your public speaking. I think it's a skill that we have to continue to work on. We didn't learn this stuff in school. That's okay. These are some of the variables that help me a lot. I hope they help you. And as always, thank you so much for watching and for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one.